The iPad Pro is now officially a real computer. How's it going, guys? I'm back in the OG studio for a very special video today. Now, you may remember a while ago I made several videos discussing the different ways that you can edit videos on an iPad using more professional software. But all of those features require the use of Sidecar, which meant you had to have a laptop or desktop Mac computer as well as an iPad, and it kind of just was not that great of a workflow. It wasn't very practical to use it that way. So it meant if you wanted to natively edit a video on an iPad, your best bet was probably iMovie. DaVinci Resolve is now an app on the App Store for the iPad. And better yet, it's free to use all the basic functions. And that's what we're going to be checking out today. This now brings desktop level tools to a simple iPad. Now, before we dive into the app, let's first talk about compatibility. So it really was designed for the newest iPad Pros, which have the M1 and M2 chips. Those iPads it will perform the best on, but this will work on some older iPads, such as the version I have here. With that said, you do need to make sure that you're running iPad OS 16 or later, which I actually was not on that, and it will not let you download the app until you upgrade to iPad OS 16. All right, so after that, all you have to do is go to the App Store and search for DaVinci Resolve. Now, I've heard a few reports of people, since this just came out a couple days ago, it was not easy to find in the App Store, but now I was able to find it just by searching it. Once again, this is a brand new app, so you may run into a few bugs, which I actually ran into. So I was able to download it and clicked on the app, and it, opened up kind of their logo, like it was opening the app, but then after a few seconds, it crashed. Whenever I tapped on it to open, it crashed immediately. Open, crash. And I was like, okay. I ended up restarting my iPad thinking that was the problem, clicked on the app, a few seconds, crash. So anyways, I deleted the app, re-downloaded it from the App Store, and now I can open it. All right, so for some information on the app itself, the interface has been completely adapted to the iPad's touch screen, but it will feel very familiar to people who have used DaVinci Resolve on the desktop. A really cool feature is not only can you create new projects, but you can actually import existing projects you've already made in DaVinci Resolve 18. There's also support for multi-user collaboration through Blackmagic Cloud. The app works with H.264, H.265, ProRes, and Blackmagic RAW codecs, all on an iPad. So this app also features some cutting-edge AI processing powered by the DaVinci Neural Engine, which means tools such as the Magic Mask only require a single stroke to locate and track people, features, and objects in a shot. Now, these are features that not too long ago would require a very beefy computer, somebody very knowledgeable, and quite a bit of time to do that sort of tracking. It also has Smart Reframe, which will take your footage and change it to different aspect ratios by recognizing the action in the scene and panning with it, so you can create vertical or square versions to post to social media. This also used to require you to manually, bring your footage that was shot horizontal into a vertical timeline, scale it, track if you have any movement. It was a whole mess. So for them to be able to do this automatically saves you a lot of time, all from an iPad. Very impressive. Now, of course, since this has been optimized for the iPad, it will work with your Apple Pencil, also the multi-touch trackpad, and the Magic Keyboard. So pretty much any of your accessories that work with the iPad will most likely work with DaVinci Resolve on the iPad. Now, in terms of your workflow, since you're most likely not going to be filming on an iPad, which, cameras are okay, you're most likely going to be using an external hard drive, such as this Samsung solid-state drive I have right here. Since it's all USB-C, easily plugs into the side of your iPad, and that's where you're most likely going to store your footage. When you download the app, it informs you the app itself is 2 gigs, which is not too bad, and most of your project files are reasonably sized, so you can just store those on your iPad. But your files, especially if you're shooting Blackmagic RAW, quite massive, so that makes sense you're going to want it on an external hard drive. DaVinci Resolve for iPad, This version of DaVinci Resolve comes packed with advanced editing and color finishing tools. However, some features will be missing from this iPad model due to memory limitations. With my iPad, I have memory limitations. Video processing is restricted to HD, and some of the effects and processing tools are disabled or have limited functionality. To have full access of all DaVinci Resolve for iPad features, we recommend using an Apple iPad Pro M1 or newer models. So there you go. All right, so now that we're in the timeline, let's import some media. All right, so we're on the Samsung SSD. Let's grab some stuff from the Milwaukee Lawnmower Review. I don't know if you guys watched this, not my most popular video. Now it's prompting me to change the project frame rate, which I actually did not set the project frame rate yet, but we're going to change it just so it matches our footage. All right, so now we've got all the footage here. I'm gonna bring that into the timeline. Very fast scrubbing. So this is, we do have a solid state drive, which I would definitely recommend you have a solid state drive. But for being external, this is 4K footage. For it to be, external, and me just scrolling along, honestly, it's what I expected from an Apple product. I primarily do use Final Cut, so this feels very natural to have this nice speed. I do also have quite a bit of experience with Premiere Pro, but unless you're running a very beefy PC, you're not able to scrub this fast. Just my experience. So right now I'm just kind of selecting the parts of the clips that I want. Feels pretty natural. I believe you are able to program keyboard shortcuts, which I'm a big fan of, which you'd most likely want to do for this. But if you're just beginning and want to learn the features, using the mouse is no problem. All right, so we got a basic sequence in the timeline. Now we're gonna switch over to the color page. And as I'm sure you know, DaVinci Resolve has some of the most advanced color editing tools in any software. And they've brought this functionality to the iPad. So of course, DaVinci Resolve has node-based editing, which allows you to basically, it's essentially like a flowchart where you start from your raw clip and you can import different LUTs, different adjustments, different effects and things to go to your final product. And the great feature of having node-based editing means that you can go back to something at the beginning and tweak the colors that you did for a certain thing, and it will take it down the line. Whereas with most other software, it's a little more complicated. You have to do layers and it gets pretty messy. And if you don't use layers and you just kind of stack it all on top, it's very challenging to go back and change something at the beginning. Now, one thing that I'm noticing since I have the 11-inch iPad, when you're in this more complicated layout, the actual preview image is very small. It's like 2 inches by 3 inches, which is fine. I can see it very well, but I prefer to have my preview image be a little bit larger so you can see more details and things like that. I can adjust this right here. Maybe some other stuff doesn't really look like it. If you have the larger iPad, definitely going to be a better option. You may also be able to play around with using a secondary screen, such as an Apple TV or another monitor, but then you're getting a little bit more down the rabbit hole of what we were doing earlier with Sidecar, so best to keep it just on the iPad. That's what most people are probably going to be doing. Take this down a little bit, this down a little bit. These tools do feel very familiar if you've ever used DaVinci Resolve before. You have all of the functionality that you had on the desktop, which is something I was worried when people go to make an iPad app, at least in the past, they would dumb it down, oftentimes to a point where it's just like pointless to even have the iPad version of it. But what I see they've done here, it is truly designed very similar to the desktop version with all the functionality, and you don't have to be connected to any large device or anything. One other minor note, at least with the Apple Magic keyboard, which has a little baby trackpad, this is a little small. Maybe if you're able to use like a larger Bluetooth mouse or keyboard, kind of expand it a little bit more, you could have a little bit more precise tools. That also is where the Apple Pencil comes in handy. So actually I take back my statement. It is much easier to use the Apple Pencil. Yeah, I would definitely recommend using the Apple Pencil to make these fine-tune adjustments. The trackpad is great for moving large things around. You want to get really detailed, that's where this pencil is. Which now it doesn't feel like I need to have the large version of the iPad. This small guy is doing very well. Now, some of you may be thinking, if you already have a laptop or desktop, why would you ever want to do this? And there's many reasons. The first would be if you're traveling, don't want to carry around a large laptop, or if you don't have a laptop, you only have a desktop, you just throw this in your backpack, you can edit on the plane, and no one will think you're crazy with a large, computer, because you have just this little minimal guy with a minimal SSD. You can throw that around, won't be too big of a deal. So it's very compact, and you can do your color editing on the road, or if you need to be on location and possibly deliver dailies, which are footage that is shot on the day, maybe throw on a little LUT, export it. If you have an iPad Pro with the M1 or M2 chips, those could process that very well. You can use Blackmagic RAW, super fast, send it out to whoever you need to, you're done. You don't have to wait till you get back to your office wherever you are editing. The other thing is, if you don't have an office with a computer or even a laptop that you can edit your video on, the iPad Pros, while they are quite expensive, they're less expensive than the MacBook Pros or even the desktop iMacs and things like that. So if you're starting out and you want a multi-purpose device, you can invest in an iPad Pro, have all your functionality of being able to edit in one of the most sophisticated editing tools that was designed specifically for the iPad, and that's a great way to save money and hone your skills. Now, when I was in high school and I had no video editing experience whatsoever, I downloaded Final Cut Pro, and which I do prefer. That is a one-time payment instead of the subscription-based Premiere Pro, but it is like $300 to download Final Cut Pro. And essentially, I just taught myself Final Cut Pro by poking around and seeing what things do and looking up YouTube videos. So for somebody who's starting out, you can get DaVinci Resolve, and everything I've shown you here is in the free version. And you can poke around and see how things work without buying the software or paying a subscription price. You can learn how to use really advanced tools for free. Now, to wrap it up, one of the great features that really kind of demonstrates that DaVinci Resolve and Blackmagic Design are really looking out for you as a consumer. When you first download the app, it's free. They don't prompt you to buy the full studio version, which is $95. There is no mention, and it's actually somewhat challenging to find how you buy it. The way you find it is by using one of the effects or features that requires the studio version. And once you try to do that effect, it will prompt you to purchase the studio version. So a lot of people will use the free version, and if they run into that, okay, this very advanced effect requires that, some people will say, okay, I don't need that for this project. But it's good to know that later on, if I want to do that specific thing, I can buy the studio version and I'll have access to all that. But you can get a long ways and edit as much stuff as you want to, all with this free app that is native on the iPad. All right, I hope this video was helpful, because I know a lot of people really have been looking for professional video editing apps native to the iPad. I'm glad to say it's finally here. I look forward in the future, maybe Final Cut and Premiere Pro will learn a lesson and make their own app. We'll see. We'll see. That's it for now. Happy holidays, everyone. And as always, don't forget to keep it pro.